Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower of Author Magazine, and tonight I'm at the Pacific Northwest Writers Conference in SeaTac, Washington with Lori Tobias, author of Wander. Lori, welcome to Author.
Thank you.
So, Lori, congratulations. First of all, you are the winner of the 2017 Nancy Pearl Book Award for Mainstream Fiction.
Thank you.
Wow. And so just for our viewers, this just happened. So
this just happened. I'm still kind of reeling.
She's just reeling. So that's awesome. Congratulations. So you came to writing from journalism. That was your professional. You spent a certain amount of professional time there, at least.
My whole career has been in journalism. I was a columnist with the Rocky Mountain News. I covered the coast for the Oregonian for a decade. But the thing is, I always wanted to be a fiction writer from a very young age.
Oh, very young.
Since teenage. But I needed to earn a living, so I earned a living as a journalist, and I'm thankful for it. It taught me to write. But I wrote fiction and creative nonfiction when the day was done, or first thing in the morning.
Right.
Because this was always the dream.
And so was the job of columnist, was that? I would think that could be useful for a novelist, in that you are having to put yourself out there a little bit. Sometimes the journalists I know have trouble allowing themselves to come forward. They want to stay back and be very, no opinions on anything and that sort of thing. But at least with the columnist, you had to bring your own self forward a little bit.
Well, it's the first person, third person thing.
Yeah.
First person always came more naturally. And I would sometimes get dinged by my editors because I would write a feature and interject something that wasn't attributed to someone, and they say, but who said that? And they'd be, well, but that's just kind of a... So I had to walk that fine line. But first person has always come more naturally to me. And I do a column now, and I do it because it pays for a good bottle of wine every month, but I do it because it's the writing I really enjoy doing.
The first person columns.
Yeah.
And is there something in particular you like to talk about in your columns? Is there an angle, or is it whatever is on Lori's mind is going to be?
I'm supposed to be promoting tourism in Oregon, kind of thing. I like to do the kind of writing that comes from your gut, where you kind of expose yourself. You put a little bit out there. Like when my brother died, I wrote from my heart. I wrote from my gut. And that's hard to do, and sometimes you expose too much. But when you do it right, I think you reach other people, you touch them, you share something, and you reveal that you're vulnerable. You're as vulnerable as they are.
Right.
And you value whatever you're writing about. So that's my favorite kind of to do.
As it is for me as well. And I wonder, this is a kind of a challenging question, but for some of our viewers, maybe some of whom aren't writers or are new to writing. So we hear those terms, I write from my gut, I write about, but what does that mean to you? What does that feel like? On an experiential level, what is that? Those are words, my heart, my gut, but what is it to actually do it? What's the difference between writing more intellectually, say?
I don't know if I can answer that per se, but let me put it to you this way. I figured out at some point that I started writing at a very young age, and I started writing because it's how I process life.
Yeah.
I'm extremely sensitive. People see me as this tough ass. People see me as, Lori's gonna go out and kick your butt. Those are the facades I developed. I'm actually extremely sensitive. I feel everything. Right. Writing is how I deal with it. And so I write what makes me cry.
Yeah.
I write what makes me laugh. I'm not an intellectual writer. I'm not that bright. I have a lot of journalist colleagues I have one journalism colleague, and I would study what she'd write at the Oregonian. And I'd be like, how does she do this? What is she doing that I don't do? And I finally sat down and looked and I said, she goes at it from the psychological standpoint. Everything she writes, she gets into the psychology of it. That's her thing, and she's wonderful at it. I don't think I could do that. I get into, this is what hurts. This is what makes me laugh. This is who I am. I'm a working class girl. I come from working class people. And maybe for a time in my life, I thought I was going to there was something to rise above, or.
Sure.
But I embrace that now because it gives me the grit. It's who I am, and it's that's who I identify with.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And so, Wander, your first published novel.
Yes.
I'm going to guess maybe not the first novel you've written.
Second.
Ooh, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Sometimes it's 16, 17. Okay, so it's your first published novel. So just congratulations on that. What was it that allowed you to say, okay, now it's time to also do this? I know you've wanted to do it since you were in high school, but time passed, obviously, and so I'm assuming you're not in high school anymore. And so, what allowed you to do that?
So the first short story I wrote, this is a true thing, was a finalist in the Writers on the Edge in Southern Oregon, and Sandra Schofield took me under her wing and really encouraged me. And from then on, I came up with this idea for a novel, and I worked on it forever. It was kind of how I cut my teeth, how I learned the craft.
Right, writing one novel, just working
over
it,
and
working
over
it,
and
right.
over and over and over until finally I said, I don't even want to be writing this novel.
Yeah.
I'm done with it. So I studied with Tom Jenks.
Yeah.
And I studied with him in a class twice. And then when I started Wander and I got a couple rough drafts done, I actually studied with him again privately. I am a very quick journalist. I can boom, 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 boom. I'm a very slow fiction writer. And what I figured out is this. As a journalist, you're given a set of facts. This is who did what, this is who did da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. In fiction, it's the whole world. You can fly her to the moon tomorrow.
That's right.
So my problem is I go off on these tangents. Oh, let's take her to Las Vegas. What the hell are you doing in Las Vegas? So for me, I was all over the place. I mean, some people have the luxury of writing one draft and then revising. Not me. I write so many drafts I could have had 16 books out of this.
Right.
But I finally had to say, what are the facts of this novel?
Oh, you went back to journalism a little bit.
I gave myself the facts.
Right.
What are the facts of this book? Who is she? You know, what is the trajectory? And just do it.
So let me ask you this. So, all right, first published book, hooray, that's awesome. But writers like to keep writing, you know. And so I assume if you haven't started your next book, something is percolating in your mind about the next book.
So about the day after I lost my job at the Oregonian, I sat down and I wrote a memoir about covering the Oregon coast. The stories behind the stories, because I covered, not patting myself on the back, I mean, it was my job, some of the biggest stories that happened in the last 15 years. I covered the dock that blew in on the tsunami. I was standing on the beach watching him cut it up and remove it when I learned that my mother died. That same dock came in on my husband's birthday. I covered serial killers. I covered tsunamis. Tacky 2. So I wrote this memoir about what was going on in my life, the stories behind the stories that didn't make the newspaper.
Right.
The fact that my husband almost died of appendicitis. He had gangrene. When I was covering the Tacky 2 anniversary. So I'm out here talking to people about nearly dying, and my husband is nearly dying. You know, the things that didn't make, so that's done. It's called Stranger Than Fiction. I don't know if that title will hold, and there are some publishers interested in it. And I have another novel that I'm revising and revising and revising and revising as I do, tentatively entitled Easier to Leave. But the book I've always wanted to write, the book I have always wanted to write, and maybe that's why I haven't written it, because it scares me. So I'm married to a power lineman, and he's now a supervisor, but when we were very young, people don't know a lot about power linemen, but when you're in the construction business, they're called tramps, tramp linemen. And you follow the big jobs, you follow the storms. And so for the first 15 years of our marriage, that's what we did. It's a very dangerous job. We lost friends. There's never any ease. You're never just sure they're gonna come home. Right. And so I wanted to write what I call the tramp book. And the stories of tramping.
And is this gonna be fiction?
I go back and forth on that.
Right.
On one hand, I'd like it to be nonfiction, a memoir. And on the other hand, I have a lot more liberty if I call it fiction.
Yeah.
So.
Fascinating. Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so I've got one more question for you before I release you to enjoy your success. I'd like you to finish this sentence for me. If writing has taught me anything, it's taught me what?
To be human.